going, guys? Matt here from Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson with another bike review. So today we're showcasing the 2025 Softail Heritage Classic. So as you guys know, if you've been watching some of my other videos, the 25 model year has brought us a lot of new upgrades on the Softail family. So there's 6 bikes in the Softail family. So the Heritage is more of the touring equipped and capable bike in the bunch. This one and the Lowrider ST are comparable in terms of like their touring capabilities. This obviously is the more classic choice, and the Heritage Classic has been a bike that's been in Harley-Davidson's lineup for a very long time now. I want to say it was first introduced in like the late 80s or something like that. So touring capable bike, you have the windshield, you have the bags, it's on the Softail platform. A lot of times this bike is shopped against bikes like the Road King or even like the Street Glide or the Road Glide. If someone's looking for a bike that weighs a little over 100 pounds less than the touring chassis bikes, they still want the capabilities of packing some stuff away, having that wind protection, then the Heritage is a great choice. Me, Mickey, and Nick did a video recently on a comparison of what we refer to as the mid-tier touring bikes. The Heritage, the Lowrider ST, and the Road King. We like to kind of compare those 3 models against each other. If you want to check that video out, check in the upper right hand corner. I'm going to put a link to that video there. In the 25 model year, the Heritage, probably the biggest thing that it got is the 117 cubic inch Milwaukee 8 engine. As with all the Softails this year, they all got bumped up to 117 cubic inch motor. Significantly more power. You're looking at 98 horsepower, 120 foot-pounds of torque on this bike. So there's 3 variations of the M8 this year. The classic bikes, so this bike and the Street Bob, got the classic tune, the classic cam, where it produces power more in line with the Harleys of old. You know, the low end torque, you know, right at 3,000 RPM, you're really getting most of the torque out of these bikes. Whereas on the opposite side of the spectrum with the bikes like the Lowrider S, the Lowrider ST, that has the high output tune. So those bikes put out a little bit more power, I think 116 horsepower, 128 foot-pounds of torque. But it requires you to rev it out a little bit higher and be a little bit more proactive with keeping the RPMs high. The power is a little bit more accessible right out of the hole. You can just ride the bike with a lower throttle input, and it's just a little bit more like of that low-end torquey feeling that we're used to out of a Harley-Davidson. So more traditional tuning on this classic tuned motor. You've also got the classic pan style air cleaner on this bike to kind of coincide with that classic tune and classic nature of this bike. Speaking of new things this year and the nature of the motor, you have ride modes. So a new electrical architecture was introduced on the Softails this year. So with that electrical system that was introduced, you've got those ride modes. So we're talking about rain, road mode, and sport mode. So that's going to tailor a lot of things, not just your throttle and like the engine feel and progressivity. It also tailors your electronic aids. So there are new electronic intervention aids on this bike. It's got the 6-axis IMU now, which is something that was introduced to the touring bikes years ago. I want to say about 4 or 5 years ago it was introduced to the touring bikes. So that technology has been introduced to the Softails this year. So you've got things like your cornering enhanced ABS. You've got your traction control on these bikes now. You've also got drag torque slip control on these bikes. And then you've also got the cornering enhanced traction control as well. So based on your lean angle on the bike, the electronics are going to tailor your ABS and your traction control based on the lean angle you're in, if you're a turn or if you're going in a straight line, which is super helpful. New controls, switch housings have been updated with that new electrical system on here as well. You've also got the addition of the traction control button. You can turn off the traction control if you don't want it for whatever reason. You've also got cruise like usual on the Heritage. You've got cruise on all the Softails now actually.
So Matt asked me if I wanted to shoot a video on the Heritage, and I always love to talk about the Heritage. So here in our demographic in Southern California, we don't have a whole lot of people seeking out the Heritage in comparison to the other bikes, right? So right now on the West Coast, in Southern California, a lot of people are looking for road glides and lowrider STs. And I feel like the Heritage has kind of a little bit fallen out of popularity through no fault of its own. We haven't seen a whole lot of changes on the Heritage over recent years, but the changes that they have made, a lot of the things that Matt has mentioned, are really good changes. Now we've seen a lot of the differences between the new 117s. We have the Classic, we have the Custom, and we have the high output. And I try to encourage people not to pay too much attention to that. Like, you don't really want to lose yourself in the weeds of that and miss the forest for the trees. So the 117 still has a ton of power, and especially for what this bike is designed for. I really feel like this bike is just the quintessential cruiser. And for two-wheeled bikes right now, it's the only bike that comes with passing lamps. So to have that classic look, the big 7-inch headlight with the 2 lights on the side of it, this is your only option. And this bike kind of comes up when people are looking for the Road King standard, like, hey, where's the regular Road King? Or where's the Road King? And I point them to the Road King specials, and they're like, no, the actual Road King. And this is kind of where people are landing now. I also see a lot of people coming off of baggers as they get deeper into their riding careers and they don't tour quite as much as they used to, and maybe age is catching up to them, father time is undefeated, and they want something a little bit lighter. The touring bike isn't as much of a necessity for them anymore if they're not doing cross-country rides, and a lot of their friends don't really ride distance anymore. So this is a really good bike for downsizing without downgrading. So the bike is still fantastic, it's extremely comfortable. One of the sneaky things about the Heritage is that it is extremely ergonomically sound. Like, once you sit on the bike, you're kind of just like, yeah, this is what a Harley's supposed to feel like. Now, I'm not a giant like Matt Laidlaw. He's too big for all the bikes. I'm pretty average in height. I'm 6'1", and I fit on this bike just as well as I fit on the baggers. Now, I do find the touring chassis to be a little bit more comfortable on those longer days, which is the kind of riding that we do. But if you're not doing those trips 6, 8, 10 times a year, then I think this bike really steps up in contention, especially if you're not into the sportiness of the inverted front forks and you want a little bit more of that classic look. This bike kind of checks all of those boxes. So you have a little bit of storage, you have a little bit of wind protection, you have all the new accoutrement from the electronic features and the rider aids and traction control, ABS, cruise control, all of those things, and still it's on a very classic looking bike. I think one of the things that Harley doesn't get enough credit for is how much they're able to hide on these motorcycles. All the electronics, you don't really see a bunch of plastic, a bunch of wiring harnesses on the outside of these bikes. And that's one of my favorite things about big twin Harleys in general, is that they look so simplistic, even though under the hood, so to speak, you have a lot of electronic aids and you have a lot of technology going on in your favor. So if you're not necessarily into the sport side of Harley-Davidson, like the sport touring, the STs, the performance baggers, all that kind of stuff, and you're more into the classic Harley-Davidsons, this is really where you're gonna land. Now, I wouldn't be me if I didn't give Harley a little bit of crap, and there are some things that I don't really love about this year's Heritage. Some of the differences from the Heritage models previously, since 18 and up, since we've seen the switchover of the chassis and the M8 platform, is they had 2 different options for you most of the time. They had a chrome option and they had a black option. This year, it seems like there's a little bit of a mix of both, and it seems like it's uncommitted. Like, it's not really a fully chromed out bike and it's not really a fully blacked out bike. And I understand the premise is that you can go either way with it, but that kind of requires you to have to make a decision of, am I going to black this thing out or am I going to chrome this thing out? I think if we took a poll, it would probably be near 50-50 of how many people like black trim Heritages and how many people like chrome trim Heritages. If there was a swing either way, I think it would go chrome, just because of the classic look of this motorcycle and chrome having that classic feel.
Now, a couple things about riding this bike. This may come as a surprise. It was kind of a surprise to me in the moment. When I was able to go to Texas this year with the Harley-Davidson team and some of the other guys that produce content, we were riding these bikes around a lot around the Austin area, and I found myself choosing the Heritage just to kind of ride when we were putting on a decent amount of miles. I found myself favoring this bike because right out of the box in its stock form from the factory, the Heritage is the most comfortable Softail you can buy. Now, there's things you can do to the other bikes, of course, but this seat, by far the most comfortable seat available on a Softail from the factory. The suspension, you have a little bit taller shock on this bike when compared to a bike like the Street Bob or the Breakout or the Fat Boy. Also, handling wise, with the tire size and profile of the wheels that are on the Heritage, the cornering is great, the handling is real nimble, relatively speaking to cruisers that are in this class. So you've also got the lace wheels on this bike, which I think the lace wheels are right at home on the Heritage Classic. That just kind of goes with the classic nature of this bike in years past. So I'm glad that we've got the spokes. This is a tubeless rim, so it's got that externally mounted spoke design on here that we first saw introduced on the CVO Road Glide. So that's really nice as well, tubeless tires. The other benefit to that and having tubeless tires is that allows you to have the tire pressure monitoring system, the TPMS. So that's one more additional feature that's available now because of this new electronic system that's been introduced on the 25 model year Softails as well. So being able to tell your tire pressure right here on your gauge is super nice. Speaking of gauge, you still have a very classic speedometer on here, and then you have an LCD screen on the bottom for things like your fuel, your trip A, your trip B. Your RPM is also there digitally on the LCD screen. That's one that I like to typically keep it on. You've got fog lamps on this bike as well. So one more thing to kind of give it that overall touring package and capability is you've got some of the best lighting that is found in the Softail family this year as well. Obviously, when I tell people, when I kind of coach people on the floor on what bike they should buy, I tell them, hey, you got to be in love with this classic styling. This is a very classic, quintessential Harley-Davidson look and design, really. The design of this bike can be traced all the way back to really the Hydroglide days. So the mid-50s is kind of when we first saw a lot of these features with the leather and the styling on the bags, the stitching on the seats, the tank lapel here. All that stuff is very reminiscent of 70 years ago, which is cool. So you've got a lot of the real classic DNA of Harley-Davidson in this bike. Now, if you're someone that likes a little bit more modern styling, then maybe you might want to consider a Lowrider ST. Once again, these are all things that we cover in the video we did a couple months ago. I'll answer a couple frequently asked questions on this bike as well. A lot of times people say, can I remove the bags? Yes, you can remove the bags. It's not a quick detach kit like a Lowrider ST where you just pull out a hinge, you twist it, and it pops right off. You need tools. It's not really designed for the bags to come on and off real freely. Yes, you can take them off. You're going to want to change the hardware on there because then you have screws coming out and it's kind of ugly. So I think the Heritage is a great bike for you if you want comfort. If you want comfort and you want the utility of the bags, you want the utility of the windshield. Yes, the windshield does come off very easily. It pulls right off in about 2 seconds. So you do have some versatility there. Like I said, if you're a guy that wants to have the touring capabilities of a Heritage and maybe you don't want an 830-pound bike in a Road Glide or a Street Glide, if you want the 700, a little over 700-pound bike, then this is a good option for you. If you like this classic appeal, one more reason to go with the Heritage. And I always tell people too, okay, get the bike that's closest to what your ultimate goal is. I think when people look at a Harley-Davidson, a lot of times they're thinking, okay, what are some things that I could be doing to this bike to really give it that style and that function that suits my needs? Well, hey, if this bike is as close to your ultimate vision or project that you're imagining in your head, then it's a great starting point, right? And I say that, but it's also a great finishing point. You don't necessarily have to put anything else into this bike. It tours really good. The comfort's really good. You've got a preload on the rear shock. This has a monoshock in it. When they introduced this frame in the 2018 model year, they went to a single monoshock in the rear. So you can adjust the preload there. As far as the storage goes, you can fit a half helmet in here. You cannot fit a full face in there. So you have less storage in these bags than you're gonna find on like a touring chassis saddlebag, like a Road King or Street Glide. So that's something to keep in mind. At the end of the day, guys, if you're really going all in on touring and you want just the most room for you, your passenger, your luggage and everything, then yes, you're gonna get more of that in a touring chassis bike. But if you're willing to cut that back a little bit, compromise a little bit on those things, and getting the benefits of a little bit more of a hot rod touring bike and reduce that weight, then this is a great option for you. I would describe this as like if I'm comparing this to the car world, if we're using Chevy, like a Chevy Traverse or something, a Road King or a Street Glide or something is maybe like a Chevy Tahoe, just a bigger vehicle, more creature comforts, typically speaking, more room. And then you could say like a CVO is like the Escalade of the lineup or something like that.
Another one of those features that kind of changed and doesn't really sit in either camp is the 2-in-1. Now, I like that they did the 2-in-1 headers, and that is a great option for most of the bikes, but this would be one of the bikes where I would say maybe we should stick with the 2-in-2, and I'm not really sure how far I want to go on all of these suggestions, right? So I'm glad that the lighting is all LED now, because those taillights of old from 2024 seemed like it was the same taillight since, I don't know, 1940 or something like that. So I'm glad they updated that. So I'm not really sure which camp I want to stay in. Do I want this to stay as a very, very old school bike, or do I want those technological upgrades while still maintaining the feel of a very classic motorcycle? But ultimately, if you like the classic look of a Harley-Davidson, you like this style of motorcycle, it's really hard to beat the Heritage. It comes with passenger provisions, which a lot of the other bikes don't come with passenger provisions. When you talk about the Lowrider S, the Lowrider ST, the Road Glide CVO ST, they're not coming with the passenger provisions. This comes with the bags, it comes with the wind protection, it comes with all the safety features, the cruise control, the 5-gallon tank. It's kind of hard to dislike this bike, especially once you've ridden it. I think foot positioning is a big difference for me. So while I'm not super tall, getting on the mid controls like the Street Bob, the Lowrider S and ST, that seating position isn't the most comfortable for me and my body type. I really like the touring chassis because of how I sit on the bike and how comfortable it feels while I'm riding, and I'm still able to maneuver the bike and muscle the bike around in ways that I want to. The Heritage feels almost exactly like that. So it is a little bit smaller of a chassis, but instead of a 26-degree rake that you have on a bagger, you've got a 30-degree rake on the Heritage. So the wheelbase is very, very similar. It's very, very comfortable, and it's really just a joy to ride. So in my opinion, if the look of this bike is something that's appealing to you, I highly recommend you ride the bike, and I think you will be impressed because the bike is comfortable straight out of the box. I'm not thinking, man, I need to change the seat, man, I need to change the bars, man, I need to change the foot controls. Really, it's just a stylistic thing. If you want a different looking seat, I'm sure you can find a better looking seat for your own tastes.
Hopefully that helps you guys out. The Heritage has been in the lineup for a very long time for a reason. It hits all those style points like I mentioned. It's a very versatile, functional bike, and I think it's one of those models that we're probably going to have the rest of the time that Harley-Davidson's in business.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. If you live in the Southern California area and you are in the market for a Harley-Davidson, please come see us. We are family owned and operated. We do no dealer markup, no dealer fees of any kind, just straight up good business, and we'd love to have yours.